we're doing a how-to-do video on building a PC.
Before this video starts, I just want to quickly come on here and give you a quick summary of what's about to happen. The purpose of this video is to showcase the process of how to build a PC. This topic is related to technology because it'll allow you to understand how PCs work and it'll improve your technical skills and knowledge. That being said, I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you have any questions, be sure to leave a comment down below.
So we're starting with the motherboard. This is the motherboard, or called the main unit system for a PC, where it houses majority of the important parts. So right now we're gonna start with installing the RAM. And the key important thing with installing RAM is that there's a tiny slot here. You don't have to fit in with a certain slots. And then you have to make sure it does align, because if it doesn't align, it won't fit, you know, like this. So you have to make sure it's well aligned. And then you click it in, and it should lock in like that. And you have another one, different spaces apart. Then, voila. Okay, so for the next step, we now have the CPU installation. So it depending on your motherboard, they could have a Intel socket or AMD socket. To know if it's a Intel socket, it would normally be just a square. Now, in order to install it, you would have to align these point bridges in the end, where you would see triangles, and then just perfectly align it. Make sure it's on there. And then clamp it down with the lever, and it just, there you go. For the next step, you would have to add thermal paste. Just a tiny dab of this thermal paste. You don't want to put too much. Just want to, you know, put a tiny circle, just like that. And then you would have your CPU fan, and then you just put it on top. And you basically finish the whole process on installing all the essential needs on the motherboard. So we're gonna do step 2 of the process now. We're gonna have this motherboard go into this case. Well, first you need a case that would fit the motherboard. So when you do buy your case, you would need to have stuff installed. So once you find where the designated screws are, all you have to do is put this in, slide it in there, and then once you do that, it is going to just fit in there. There we go. Next up, you have to take your screws and then just screw the motherboard in, and then you repeat that based on how much screws the motherboard needs. So for this one, you can see the highlighted spots. You have this, this, and this. Then you repeat that, and then your motherboard will be in.
So this is the power supply unit. It's what powers the entire computer. To install it into the case, you just have to line these screw holes up with the holes into the case right here. You need to mine the wires, place it into the case, make sure the power supply unit is flush, just like this. And now you just need to screw it in. And just like that, your power supply is installed. For our next step, we're installing a GPU, and what a GPU is a graphics processing unit, and what it does, it visualizes images, videos, and linear graphs. To find the slot to put the GPU in, it'll be this slot right here. Depending on the motherboard, it could be anywhere. Here's another spot where the GPU could go in. To install it, you just have to align the pins. So as you can see, there's a small one and a long one. The small one goes in the small hole, and the long one goes in the long slot. So you just gotta maneuver it and make sure it lines up with this bracket right here as well, and you just slide it in, and now it's in your computer. Alright, so now we're gonna connect all these power supply cords in its corresponding designation. First off, we're gonna start with the PCIe. This one normally goes connecting through GPUs. Graphics cards like this would come with 8 pins, but this one came with a 6-pin. We're gonna have to connect the PCIe to this one, corresponding to whatever pins you have. You have to slide it back in here. Align it. Nice. Alright, it's in. Then we're gonna start off with now the CPU, which should go into here. You would see there's like a white thing. It does say ATX system, but that's usually where this fun thing goes into.
Through here, nice. In this part of the section, I am connecting the power supply cables into their designated slots, which can be found on the motherboard and the GPU. The reason why these cables have their own designated slots, mostly because they're just integrated that way, and it could help the power supply power equally. Nice. Depending on what PC you have, most cases you wouldn't need majority of some of these wires, because some of these are just mostly reconnecting wires. This is a SATA connector, but we don't currently have a SSD connected, so this is just one example of a SATA connector, and these ones are just connecting jumpers, so when you need cross connect cables you could use this. But so far, depending on which build you have, normally you would only have the PCIe, you have the main power system, which is this for the whole motherboard, and then you have your CPU power here, and that's all for power supply connecting.
Next up, we're installing our storage. This is a SSD or solid state drive. So we're just gonna take our SATA cables and plug them into here, just like that. And this has its own designated area right there. To install the case fan, it's just 4 screws right here. I'm just gonna screw them in. And then find the wire for the fan and plug it into this connector right there. With the slot lining up with the little tab, you just push it down and it's in.
Once you set everything up, this is what you would normally see once you boot the PC for the first time without boot drive. The importance of the boot drive is that once you boot up the PC for the first time, you would have a flash drive that would have the ISO image of whatever operating system you want to use, either be Windows 11, Linux. You'll see the screen once you don't have that, so make sure you do have a USB that is bootable, but also do know once you do make a bootable drive, every file in the boot drive that you put the ISO image in, all the other files will be deleted, since the boot drive is going to be using not majority of the USB, but mostly just the files, and make sure nothing gets interrupted to the process. So once you see this process, this screen right now, you will plug in your boot drive into a USB slot. Once you do that, you'll have to press enter, which will bring you here. Normally you would go through boot manager, pick whatever you need to run the boots. For this process, you could just do a reset, since it'll detect the whole boot by itself.
2,000 years later.
Yeah, once it starts loading like that, don't mind the VirtualBox logo. Now once you see this purple screen, it's gonna ask you your product key. You can buy Windows products from like third-party websites for cheaper, not a big of a deal. For now, for the process, let's say you don't have one, you can just press I don't have a product key, and then it'll just start installing the Windows operation.
Later.
So now it's starting the whole process on downloading Windows. Once it starts finishing the install, you're gonna have to wait for this to finish up, and then it'll make you put in info and set you up. So this is the last part for the how to build a PC. Thank you.
In the event that you notice that your PC is a little bit dirty, or any other component of your PC is dirty, here's what you do. You put it in the soapy water, you're gonna take it out, you're just gonna brush it off with the toothbrush, make sure it's all nice and clean. And before you put it back into its case, if you notice that there's any pins that are bent, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna try your best to just bend them back into place. Put the chip in the correct way and close it and lock it back into place.
And in case your RAM stick just doesn't want to go into the slot, you could always, use a hammer.
And if you're in a situation where you notice that the CPU is not getting clamped in, use one of these to just